Aloha mai kako. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Lee, and I'm the operations manager of Hawai'i Contemporary, an arts nonprofit that organizes Hawai'i Triennial, our multi-site contemporary art exhibition. Welcome to the HT25 Hub. This is one of 14 venues across 3 islands that are featuring the artwork of 49 of our artists and art collectives. Tonight, we are so thrilled to be partnering with Shangri Museum of Islamic Art, Culture, and Design, as well as Doris Duke Foundation on tonight's program. I have to share, Shangri holds a very special place in our hearts, as it was the location where our co-curators, Wasanel Kudari, who's here with us this evening, Bina Choi, and Noel Kahanu first shared the theme of Aloha No with our board of directors, of whom we have a couple here tonight, including Miley Meyer, mahalo for being here, and to our other board members as well. And so with the theme of Aloha No, it's a call to know. It's an invitation to form new understandings of love around acts of care, solidarity, defiance, and transformation, which is why we're so thrilled to partner on this monthly public program with Shangri-La and the Doris Duke Foundation, starting with tonight's inspiring discussion around rebirth, resistance, and resilience. And so without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Naveed Najafi, Associate Director of Programs and Social Practice with Shangri-La, to share more about our panelists this evening. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Monica. Mahalo, everyone. Thank you for coming to our talk, and we're so excited. My name is Naveed Najafi on behalf of Shangri-La, Center of the Doris Duke Foundation. We're so excited to partner with Hawai'i Contemporary in this amazing Hawai'i Triennial in 2025. And yeah, it was really special to actually be there when the theme was unveiled, and such a powerful testament to the work of the team and the curators, and we're just really honored to be here. And it's my extreme honor, I don't know how I end up in these situations, but to be able to introduce these amazing, powerful women who you all came to check out today. So first, I would like to start with an artist who's a really good friend and also an artist who has exhibited work previously at Shangri-La, Melissa Chimera. So Melissa is a Hawaii-born conservationist and artist whose work explores species extinction, globalization, and human migration. Melissa has a BA in Natural Resources Management from the University of Hawaii at Manoa and has worked in Pacific Island land stewardship and environmental education since 1996. She is the co-host and creator of the University of Hawaii at Manoa podcast, Land and People, and has exhibited her artwork across the United States, Asia, and the Middle East. She is the recipient of the Catherine E.B. Cox Award and a finalist for the Duke University Lang Taylor Prize in Documentary Studies. Her perspective concerning the Maui wildfires and her work on immigrant narratives has been mentioned in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Hyperallergic. In 2022, Melissa was the 2022 Anchorage Museum Artist in Residence and the Mikhail Endowment Grantee at the University of Toledo for her work on immigrant narratives. Her work is held in the collections of the Arab American National Museum, the Honolulu Museum of Art, and the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts. So please welcome Melissa Chimera. It's my extreme honor now to introduce Chef Ahu Hettema. Chef Ahu is the owner and executive chef of Istanbul, Hawaii, one of Hawaii's leading Turkish and Mediterranean restaurants. Born in Mersin, Turkey, she grew up immersed in her mother, Chef Nili's kitchen, where over 30 years of culinary experience shaped her understanding of food and tradition. While studying in San Francisco, immigration challenges prevented Ahu from returning home, leading her to reconnect with her heritage through cooking. In 2015, she and her mother began selling food at Oahu farmers markets, blending Ottoman traditions with Hawaii's seasonal ingredients. A journey that led to the opening of Istanbul, Hawaii in 2020, a restaurant she, her husband, and her parents built from the ground up. Her background in animation and visual effects informs her thoughtful approach to hospitality, where food, design, and storytelling come together with intention. Under her leadership, Istanbul, Hawaii has earned recognition, including Honolulu Magazine's Best Mediterranean Restaurant from 2021 through 2024, Star Advertiser's Best Mediterranean Restaurant from 2021 through 2024, and SBA Women-Owned Business of the Year for Hawaii in 2022. As a James Beard Foundation Women's Entrepreneur Leadership Fellow, Chef Ahu continues to shape the conversation around food and entrepreneurship, bringing national visibility to modern Turkish cuisine while creating new opportunities rooted in tradition and innovation. And I'd like to also announce that Chef Ahu is Shangri-La's current culinary artist in residence. And again, a tremendous honor now to get to introduce Kumu Vicky Holt Takamine. So Gish Award winner Kumu Vicky Holt Takamine is an alum of Kamehameha Schools and the University of Hawaii, earning bachelor's and master's degrees in dance ethnology. In 1975, Kumu Vicky underwent uniki, graduated, which is a graduation through the rituals of hula, to become a Kumu Hula from hula master Mikey Au Lake, and established her own halau, which is a hula school, Pua Ali'i Ilima, in 1977. Kumu Vicky is recognized as a Native Hawaiian leader for her role as an advocate for the protection of Native Hawaiian rights, social justice issues, and the protection of the natural and cultural resources of Hawaii. She is the co-founder and executive director of Pa'i Foundation, an arts organization that was established to preserve and perpetuate Hawaiian cultural traditions for future generations. Please welcome Kumu Vicky Holt Takamine. Okay, also my great honor now to introduce the moderator for this evening, Maurine Knighton. Maurine is the Chief Program Officer at the Doris Duke Foundation, where she oversees national grant-making programs in arts, environment, medical research, child well-being, and building bridges. Since joining the foundation in 2016, she has played a pivotal role in shaping its arts initiatives, including leading the Doris Duke Artist Awards and advancing efforts to make the performing arts more inclusive and equitable. Previously, Maurine Knighton was Senior Vice President for grant-making at the grant-making at the Nathan Cummings Foundation and Senior Vice President for Program and Nonprofit Investment at the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. She has also held leadership roles at 651 Arts, the nonprofit finance fund, and the Numbra Theater Company. A dedicated advocate for arts and philanthropy, she has served on the boards of Grantmakers in the Arts, Association of Performing Arts Professionals, Firelight Media, and currently chairs the Cultural Investment Fund Committee at the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone Development Corporation. Please welcome Maurine Knighton.
Thank you so much, Naveed, and welcome to all of you. It's such an honor to be here with you. The theme of tonight's panel is apt, as you can hear from the wonderful accomplishments and accolades of the three panelists we have the honor of speaking with tonight. The name of the panel is, of course, around rebirth, resilience, and resistance. And so I'd love to start by grounding us in your definitions related to those concepts to find out how, in fact, they resonate with each of you in your life, in your work. So I'd like to start with you, Kumu Vicky. As a Kumu Hula and cultural advocate, you've worked to ensure the survival of Native Hawaiian traditions. What does rebirth look like to you in the context of cultural preservation?
I think when we think about rebirth, many of our cultural traditions were lost after the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. and colonization, with Christianity moving in, and hula, for example, was banned. Hawaiian language was banned. So when we talk about rebirth, we're thinking about revival and rebuilding our knowledge of our cultural traditions, knowledge of our languages. So I think that through a hula, we've been able to bring many of these cultural traditions to life once again. And I think about us all being born out of the ocean. Our islands are born out of the ocean. We're all born out of water. And so for me, rebirth brings us into this next generation, and we look to building those relationships and rebirthing more of our cultural practices.
Thank you. Melissa, you work as a conservationist, as we heard earlier, and an artist. And that work often explores themes of migration as well as loss. How do you see rebirth manifesting in the scientific and artistic realms that you navigate?
So I have a few notes here to keep me on track. I think science and art really are expressions of the same thing, the pursuit of understanding the world around us through deep questioning and appreciation of the beauty of, both natural phenomenon and artistic creations. Our endeavors as artists, Auntie Vicky, Chef Ahu can attest to this, are highly experimental, and they require deep observation, kilo-based learning, right? So, and a highly creative mind. And it's this insatiable curiosity that leads us to share sort of a natural skepticism for the status quo as artists and creatives. And for me, and for many others at this time, it leads us to questioning the sort of prevailing worldviews, the global and economic systems as it relates to the unraveling of, the natural systems, the ecological systems. So for me in art, I'm always trying to answer questions of why are we seeing, this incredible extinction crisis? Why are we seeing the largest migration of humans in the world since World War II? Why are we seeing this flattening of our biological and cultural diversity, human diversity? And I think these things are connected. How that plays out in my artwork is really with, my current exhibition at for the Hawai'i Triennial called Huli Honua, Transformed Landscapes. And I'll just preface it by saying that I'm not an installation artist. I wasn't until this point. I'm, a painter, an oil painter primarily. But I wanted to take, in this particular installation, invasive animals. So those are deer. This public installation has 360 deer antlers that I borrowed from friends of mine who are hunters on Maui. And I installed them on this 8-foot tall wall by 20-foot wide wall with Native Hawaiian sedges beneath them and water flowing through the entire installation. And the work references sort of the impact of invasive animals on our landscapes, which were brought to Hawaii in 1778. They have disrupted our native ecosystems, but they also support subsistence hunting in the present. And the title of the work alludes to Haumea, the Hawaiian goddess of earth and fertility. And it really symbolizes sort of the radical renewal of the earth. Huli honua literally means to huli, to turn over the honua. This is manifestation of Haumea. And it's not so much that, the transformation has taken place, but that it is preparing the ground for that transformation to take place, whether that is, a spiritual transformation or an actual on-the-ground transformation of the land through, our restoration efforts. And I'll just close by saying that, that the bottom of the panel actually has an olelo no ayao that says, he ali'i ka aina, he kaua ke kanaka, which means the land is the chief and the person is the servant. And that really speaks to, everything that we're talking about tonight.
Thanks. Chef Ahu, when I think about immigration, that brings to mind rebirth to a certain degree as well. And so I'm curious about your journey as a chef and how it's been shaped by personal and geographic displacement. Specifically, how's your connection to food help you reclaim your identity and culture, both personally and for the community?
Food truly exists across the time, holds past, present, and future. To me, food has a special place because my mom's love language is food, and this is what made me interested in cooking food with her and learning about culinary art. The rebirth to me is redefining, refining yourself, what you do, and becoming just more beautiful every day. And when I think about the food and immigration, food truly connected me with my heritage, my memories. It created a bridge between me and my culture, and using local ingredients as much as we can, and sometimes creating Turkish food through local ingredients, even though it is not exactly the same thing, but it does taste like same thing. That's what make me connect with the land and people here, and being in relationship with the farmers, with our guests, with my mom. We just created a family away from family here, and that was so special about being in Hawaii.
Thank you. And, you know, you've each in your own way touched on, in talking about rebirth, a notion, Melissa, that you brought up around disruption and then radical renewal, right, as an outcome of that disruption. And so turning to that, I also am hearing about adversity, navigating that disruption to get to the renewal. What has been one of the biggest challenges that each of you has faced, and how did you navigate it?
I guess for me, it's always government. It's been, you know, government has just put so much restrictions and rules and regulations where there doesn't need to be. Sometimes they interfere into our lives where we don't need that much regulation. So, you know, I think that oftentimes we have to be a little bit more cognizant about what the government is doing. So at the state legislature, for example, you know, we have to watch these bills because, you know, several years ago, we had to go down and chant and drum for 24 hours to shut down the legislature and kill the bill. And I see bills coming through next week that is calling for our people to come out. So just keeping them informed and educated on, you know, maybe too much restrictions on our lives and too much control, I think is an issue. But I also think that, you know, we as people need to be more aware of what's going on in those Capitol buildings, because by the time we hear about it, sometimes it's too late. So I think when Melissa was talking about, you know, huli turning over, you know, I think about huli here. There's a lot of things going on right now that we have to start to think about how we shift the narrative and how we start to huli and huli here, or think about this rebirth, regeneration, to reconnect ourselves with the land, reconnect ourselves with each other, and then pull our resources together.
And just before we move on to the others, do you think there's as much of an opportunity to do that now as there has been in the past?
I think it has to be now. We have to make the time to do it. I don't know that we can wait for it to, we have to be the change makers ourselves. So however each one of us in this room can make a difference, I think we have to do that.
Great. Okay. Chef, do you want to take a turn at this next?
To me, I agree with Kumu Vicky about the government. As a person who was told, leave the country within 30 days, we will come and arrest you, detain you. These terms were very foreign to me because I never had any legal trouble in my entire life. And They took my papers away from me, and this is when I had this identity crisis through them. Because when you don't have papers, you sometimes question your existence. You're like, am I really be here? Because you're not allowed to do many things when you don't have papers. And food became my mirror, reminded me who I am, where I come from. And yes, Kumu Vicky is absolutely right. I think we need to be part of the change. We need to act on it. We need to hear and learn what's going on in our community. Decisions are being made without, most of us are not even aware of those decisions. We just learn through the consequences. And my immigration story is a bit like that, because when I learn even the most criminal has right for a timeline. As an immigrant, you don't have the time. You are just a void. They don't have to get back to you. Even though you didn't do anything wrong. And they were the ones actually made the mistake. I absolutely agree. If we can just be more aware and take actions and not allow other people make decisions about our lives, I think the whole world will be much more beautiful for all of us.
Yeah, mistakes. I think we've lived through them. For me personally, 2023 August, I was working in wildfire science communication for 3.5 years, and then Maui fires happened, which were just completely devastating. And all of a sudden, I was shoved into a very public role of speaking to media across the world about what had happened there. That was, just sort of life-changing. I think everyone in the room maybe knows somebody or knows somebody who knows someone who's affected by that. And then a month later, the leveling of Gaza started to happen too. And all of these things they're sort of like all in one. And so, what I realized was that, while the means by which both of these geographies have, been leveled and people have been decimated and totally displaced and killed, the intention, is obviously different in both of those places. One is a lack of care and the other one is just, obliteration. The outcome is the same. And it became quite clear to me that those two events were linked in a lack of care for people and a lack of care for the land. And this is reflected in the podcast, Land People, with the folks that we interviewed throughout that time. But how it manifested in the artwork was a painting, Not Even the Fiercest Wind, which State Foundation has in its collection, and that really links. It's an abstract painting in which I, cut up other paintings that I had made and then sewed them and distressed them and burned parts of the painting. But that line actually comes from the alma mater of Lahaina Luna that says that not even the fiercest wind of Kauaula can extinguish the torch. And that, I think, is the steadfastness that the people of Lahaina, the people of Gaza have shown us, that they will continue no matter what.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. One of the things that I've grappled with a lot over the years is this notion of resilience, which is one of the things that we're talking about today. And you've each touched on resilience in ways that are productive, that are positive, that keep us moving forward. But one of the things I think about a lot is whether there are limits to resilience, and if there are or not, should there be limits to resilience? Is there a place after which a community or an individual even shouldn't be expected to be resilient in order to survive and to even get past surviving to thriving? I guess that's a little bit of a loaded question, and so I apologize for that. But I'm really curious about that. What are your perspectives on that?
I think that we shouldn't be relying on our spark plugs in Lahaina to do this work. That is absolutely, we shouldn't be, and yet the people of these geographies show us what courage and resilience is. Should we be relying on that? Should our hard-earned tax dollars be supporting people and care for the land? Absolutely. So where our priorities are wrong, are systematic, that's not going to take away from the fact that people are going to care for one another and kako together, no matter who you are, right? But I think there is something systemically wrong with relying on people's volunteer efforts to get themselves out of, frankly, man-made situation.
I think resilience is very important component of a human life, and you must be resilient as long as you believe the purpose of being resilient for that situation. And if you truly believe as in your heart that is what you're doing is okay, what you're doing is right, you have to be resilient. It's not a decision whether should I stop believing this or should I quit doing this. I think as long as you believe in it, you will be resilient. I think it's a matter of what you believe, if it is okay for you to do it or not. You will answer this question to yourself, I think.
And I think it gives others hope for the future. And oftentimes, we need people to champion for us, to sometimes at our lowest point, when we are like really, you need somebody to step up there and say, no, you need to get your butt up there. I was going to say something. But you need to
That's my mom.
You need to get your butt up and pull up your bootstraps and tighten up those belts and start moving, because if we don't, then we give in to those powers. And that's the part for me that is like, I'm not willing to do that. And I want to work with people, that are going to be champions in whatever. It's like we cannot do it for everybody. We all have to do it together, And I don't. It's not like dial a demonstration or dial a vigil or dial an activist. We all have to be the activist, all of us.
That's a great segue to what I wanted to talk about next, which is resistance. Resistance, of course, takes many forms. It can take the form of showing up to practice your culture through food, other creative expressions. It can take the form of political action, and it shows up in any number of ways. But I'd like to hear from each of you about how you see your work providing resistance and pushing back against dominant narratives or structures. And so, Auntie Vicky, since you had the last word on the last one, we'll come back to you to have the first word on this. So, of course, as you've already referenced, the fight for Hawaiian sovereignty and cultural integrity is ongoing. It's not over. How do you use your platform as a Kumu Hula and a leader to advocate for Native rights and representation?
Yeah, so I see hula not just as an art form for tourism, for entertainment, but I see hula as a form of resistance against that colonization process, because through hula we are teaching dance in the language of our people. We're teaching the next generation how to speak their language. They may not be fully understanding everything, but they understand through the body of, because movement for dancers, movement is an art form and movement is a language. So while people can be fluent ika olala Hawaii in the language by speaking, they may not be a good dancer. Not all speakers can dance, And some people can dance but can't speak because their body is their language. And so I think we all have these different ways of being resistance, but hula has been responsible for reviving Hawaiian cultural practices, for the art of kapa making, for the art of lei making, for the art of growing plants, for the art of cooking, the art of making a luau, because that's part of our graduation ritual, is to have a pig roasted in the underground ame. We have to do that. We have to have an imu. You have to have all of the kino lao, the earthly manifestations of the gods, from the forest. So we've had to protect our forests and make sure that these natural resources are healthy in the forest. So we've had to be farmers, we've had to be chefs, we've had to be printmakers, we've had to be artists in all different frameworks and revive that. We had to make our own instruments. So we've had to be carvers. And I think because of that, when these things were lost, hula has been responsible because, oh, we're going to dance hula for you and entertain you. But, you know, I can tell you that you're a pig, but in my language. And you won't know it, what I just said, that you're a kolea that comes over here, gets fat on my land, and then takes off with all of the riches. So, but we do that with a smile because we know you don't understand anything I just told you. And I've insulted you, but it's okay. You paid us for that, and we're going to use that funding to build my new halal studio, whatever. But so I think that these things are really important for us to share with the next generation. And in my language, it's beautiful.
Melissa, your art and conservation work intersection with global issues like climate change and displacement as well. How do you use your work to challenge systemic injustices? You've started talking about that a little bit already. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your approach.
So I'm really interested in systems, as if you may have heard a bit, and linking, what's happening on a local level to what is happening on a global level. We're inundated with statistics all the time, with thousands of deaths. And someone said that, the death of one man is a catastrophe. The death of 10,000 is a statistic. So, when I wish I had met you, Chef Ahu, before to hear your immigration story, because we were just talking about it, and I swear it would have, just inspired, an artwork or something. But, I really wanted to address, the movement of people, the largest movement of people that we've seen, through art and through my own personal stories, through my family stories. So I started off with looking at the public archive of my Lebanese and Filipino ancestors who came here, picked up their ship manifests and their census records, and went through all of that, which culminated in a show at the Honolulu Museum of Art in 2019 called Migrant. Prior to that, there was a show that I curated and was in at the Arab American National Museum called The Far Shore, and that looked at the Arab diaspora from World War I onward to America, told through the personal lens of poetry and art. And then I wanted to sort of examine, are these narratives from the past, from my ancestors, even relevant today to today's migrants? So in 2020, I went out and interviewed Filipino fishermen at Pier 39 who fish in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, and that's the food on our table. By the way, they're not allowed to get off the boats for 2 years. There is a legal loophole that allows them to bypass U.S. labor laws, which would otherwise mandate that you have a 70% or whatever it is American crew. Hawaii does not have that, and they can hire people to be on contract when they simply cannot even step foot off these boats. So I wanted to talk to them. That culminated in another exhibition called Remittance, and referencing sort of the payments that go from these folks. And I met so many amazing people through that project and through the Anchorage museum project, looking at the Filipino diaspora of people who've been working in canneries and so forth. So those immigration stories are fascinating. They're always just so many of them heartbreaking. The one thing I learned from talking to those folks was that people really do have agency, resilience and grit through it all. So the folks that are on the fishing boat, their average age is 45 because they come back year after year because the contracts are so good. But you go to their home countries in the Philippines, and there really is no choice for anyone who's not, upper class, right? So that's been an immigration story told through the personal, and then more recently through the work on the podcast Land and People. I've gotten to just meet the most amazing people, Hannah Springer and Kekuhi Kanakaole and Steve Perlman, who's a biologist on Kauai, people who are deeply, deeply tied to the land, culturally, biologically, and elsewhere, and just capturing their stories through that podcast. So again, it's that personal story that matters so much.
Thank you. Chef?
Unfortunately, as a chef, I am able to see what's going on in the food industry, and it is just very sad. Hawaii is completely relying on what's coming to Hawaii, even though Hawaii has one of the most fertile lands. That being said, that is a big question mark. Why? Well, we first wanted to be a farmer with my family before we started the restaurant. And when we truly wanted to be a farmer, I learned how hard to be a farmer. You know, it's always easy to negotiate about the prices with the farmer for many, many people. However, I think most people don't even understand what farming is and how hard that is and how little money they make. Big supermarkets buy the food from them and they make the money. The farmers are not making any money. It is actually a choice of life because they have been doing generations and generations, and they honor that tradition. That's why they are still our farmers. So it is a very big question mark why this is still happening, even though most people are aware of this, right? When you really want to count how many farmers we have, even in Oahu, it will be less than probably 10 true farmers. They are just doing true farming, respecting the land, doing as organically as possible, doing with purpose. So I think if we just make our community more aware of this fact and connect people with the farmer, not just with the farmers market, because farmers market is not going to solve the problem. I think if we can make it normal for people to visit the farms, go support the farms, eat at the farms, learn the farmers, understand how hard they work, and maybe volunteer for them, maybe we can start stepping up, not be relying on what's coming from outside. And this is what can help the community, help to preserve the culture. As our part, we do work with many farmers. And even then I hear stories after stories how hard to be a farmer, and it's just heartbreaking, and they are fading away. Most people are not aware of this, but if you do not support your community and your farmers, and if you are buying most of your items from big supermarkets, you are losing the people who really work for your food. Most of the food that comes to Hawaii is poisoning us, because if you look at the nutrition value for something that is taken away from the earth for the first 2 days, first and second or third day, the nutrition value versus something that is coming to the island that is probably sitting on the grocery shelf for 14 days, 16 days, 3 weeks. The nutritional value is not the same. And taste is not the same. That is one thing about the most amazing chefs are, well, what most of us try to do is we try to get the freshest ingredient directly from the farmer, because it's a win-win situation. We help the community, and we also able to give delicious food this way. It is the secret to the delicious food if you eat fresh food. There's one very big problem happening, of course, across all, I believe, Hawaii Islands. And if we can all get inspired and share these stories and help our farmers, I think that will be amazing, because food is so powerful. It is the biggest medicine healer, and it is the most abused drug, which no one want to talk about it, but it is the most abused drug. We all go open the refrigerator door and want to comfort ourselves through food. That is when we use the food as a drug more than substance. But it's also very important substance and has a healing power. And if we can just be sustainable and have sustainable food chain in Hawaii, Hawaii will thrive. Hawaii will not gonna rely on anybody. And this is when I think Hawaii can really start to preserve the culture. People will be healthier. food is so powerful. I can just talk about this hours and hours, but I don't want to take all the time from these amazing ladies. So
I think one of the reasons that we don't have as many farmers is because of the water. So when the sugar plantation came over, they sucked all the water over onto their plantation, which is what happened in Maui.
and it's so expensive.
Yes,
to
but the
bring
water, so water in ancient Hawaii was not a commodity. You could not take water. You had to return the water back to its point source. So if you took water out to farm your place, your farm, you had to bring it back to that same source, to the stream, so that the farmers down the road could use the same water. And it had to be in the same condition. It had to be clean water. What the sugar plantations did was suck all the water from the west side of our islands to move it all over to their plantations, dried up our streams so we could no longer have access to that water. That's what happened on Maui. Lahaina was one of the richest area with water. And so now it's not just farming. The farmers are they're taking it for development, for housing, for big condos, for tourism. So all of our water resources are being withdrawn and taken away from farming and local people. So we really have to make sure that our next water commissioner, I'm glad you mentioned Hannah Springer, because she would be the person, is the right person to put on as a commissioner for the water commission. So that gets political, but we have to be political, because if we're not, then we're gonna lose, and we're gonna lose for the future.
But also land is very expensive.
Land is very expensive.
So
yes.
by the time how a farmer will pay off that land? There are like certain very expensive equipment too you have to have in according to create a sustainable farming. Equipment is very expensive, and it just unless you have been you are a generation and generation after generation you are doing farming, it's almost impossible for someone start from ground up to become a farmer. And it is the sad fact we live today.
Yep.
So what you're talking about, to some degree, is raising awareness, because it's not something that folks necessarily think about on a daily basis. Where did this food come from, and what did it take to get it on my plate? And besides raising awareness, we're talking about challenging narratives to some degree and getting active about it. And I do want to spend a little time thinking about how we all get active per your invitation, Vicky. But before we do that, I do just want to touch on one other thing with you, Chef, because you are here from another culture and another place. And I have to imagine that it took a lot of work for you to carve out a space for yourself, for your voice and for your cuisine here in Hawaii. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced in doing that in general, and as a woman, if there were challenges that were specific to your being a woman as well in the culinary industry?
There is always challenges, I think, no matter what you do in life generally, because there is so much noise. You may have a vision, idea. There is always so much noise to try to make your idea sound like it is not good enough. It doesn't make sense. So I think the most important thing is, to me, I taught myself to quiet my mind, because if you learn to quiet your mind, the noise goes away. And this is when you really start seeing your vision, your purpose, and all those things, the challenges, things happening to you that they tell you what to do in certain way because has been happening certain way. It just all goes away because it becomes just you. And once you know who you are, your vision, your purpose, this is what I learned. All those challenges goes away, and you don't need to feel like you need to carve the space anymore. You don't need to feel like you need to take your chair and sit next to those people. You just become who you are, and when you become who you are, I think there is some sort of universal power comes to you, and you just claim where you are and what you do and what you like to do, what you want to do, what your purpose is. And I think this was a bit my journey, just not having any papers and trying to first figuring out what am I doing, who I am, and then using food as my mirror, as my identity reminder to me, my culture's reminder to me, and turning into a culinary art. All my journey taught me, I don't think you need to feel like you need to prove yourself to anybody at any point of your life. You just need to be who you are and just live your life the way you want to live. And it doesn't matter what they think, what they say, how they feel. All you need is your community, your people that you love and who support you, and always do what you believe to do. And I think just the universe will give you that space.
Thank you. So, Melissa, I'm going to throw something to you that's just, it's in here and I have to pull it out. It's not explicitly a part of the theme of the day, but it's here as in the personification of the three of you, which is around creativity. And what seems to me the essential role of creativity in rebirth, resilience, resistance. And I'd love any reflection that you have to share about the role and place of creativity.
Well, I think we're just naturally, as Homo sapiens, creative. We're makers. We're the making species, right? I think Hawaiians certainly, had it in their way, in many cultures, to be observant, to have, that curious mind, the kilo, the observation, all of that, But we've become so specialized and so segmented. Science is over here, art is over here. I mean, people didn't think like that forever. And so we have to sort of break out of that sort of like very linear and segmented thinking in order to just understand what an alternate future might be. For me, every day it's just curiosity. It's just I'm naturally skeptical. I think most of us are. It's not the world that we want to see. So how are we going to make it the world we want it to be, right? And I think what Chef Ahu has said is just sticking to that singular determination and vision to what that might be, and damn the rest of it. Really, I mean, that's what it kind of comes down to. Is just sticking with that and finding the people that you really can bounce ideas off of, who will be very honest with you too, and a creative partnership that might not be with your significant other or your best friend or whoever that is. It might be a colleague, it might be someone else, but that's really important, I think, in helping develop whatever medium you're in, if that's writing or food, dance, whatever, is that just creative partnership for life with another. It just can be just one other person. But I think we just sort of have to break out of our individual disciplines and think connecting across disciplines.
Yeah. Hawaiians didn't have a word for art. No. We just did what we did. And then somebody else told us, oh, that's art. And we're like, okay. Because we sometimes have a hard time putting ourselves into a box, because it goes, I'm a dancer, now I'm a chanter, and then I'm going to be a musician, and then I'm going to be a seamstress, because I've got to make my costumes, and then I've got to paint it, and then I've got to put some art on it, and I've got to be ohe kapala it, or I've got to be screen printed. And so we don't have that liberty of saying you're only this. And I think that is kind of restrictive in the Western world, is that you're only that. And it's that's not an artist. An artist kind of like, we write poetry, we sing, we chant, we dance, we create, we make clothing. We make food because it's something that everybody has to do. We're not as good as you are, but it's like I want to get some of those like seasonings. I like, and half the time it's like okay, and we're all okay. So I'm starting to be a farmer now because I'm growing my own lettuce for my turtle. It's like, so I have to, my tortoise is eating a lot. So now I started to be, I'm doing cracky farming with I'm watching YouTube to see how to be a better farmer and grow stuff. It's like, yeah, so I don't know that we're any one thing. We're all more than that. And so trying to put us into Hawaiians never had a word for art. It's hard for us to kind of, I think indigenous people have hard time to say you're justice because we're not justice. Putting a recipe together is poetry. How you put that together is really poetry, and that's artistic in a different way. The colors that come out of that, when I get my plate, I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. Do I have to eat it? But I'm starving. It's like, let's eat. But those things are really important, I think, for me, is to have beautiful plates, to have beautiful things to serve on it, to everything that we do, it's all artistic,
So
regardless of what you do.
It's that openness and receptivity.
Yeah.
Chef?
Thank you. To me, I'm just lost in words at this time, but yes, absolutely. There is no recipe because it is the moment you create that thing, right? And you try to measure it and put in words, put in grams, ounces. It just doesn't work like that. At times, if you even share the recipe, and it happened to me and my mom several times, when they come back to us, some of our guests, they are like, it doesn't taste like the way you do it. And I think it's partially because in the moment of doing it is how you feel it. There is something else infuses into the food. It's not just the substance you're using. There's more than a substance to a recipe. So you cannot create that. And that's what makes most food amazing, right? That's just being present and putting something else more than substance in whatever you are doing, I think. And not just for food, but it can be for oil painting, or it can be a dance, it can be a music, poetry. When you put something more than substance in it, that's what makes us adore that thing, makes us want to look at it and evoke something within us, moves us. And that is what we share universally with each other. It doesn't matter where you come from, how you raised. You just lose some sort of the wall, and you start to connect with what you are looking at, or tasting it, or listening it. That's the beauty of art.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions from the audience before I invite some closing thoughts from our panelists. So I want to open it up to all of you.
Good, we can go eat.
I know, we can all go to Istanbul now. Any questions? Yes.
Mahalo, this conversation is so beautiful. It stirs like deliciousness, like ono and desire in my heart and in my stomach. And I'm curious, in that triangulation of resistance and resilience and rebirth, how do we feed desire? And how do we feed desire that, like, you are all visionary women, right? And like the leadership that you're bringing in is multi-generational too. So like, what are the ways that you feed your desire? And then how do you also listen to where your desire is leading you to like make those kinds of critical intentional choices that continue to evoke. Yes.
What a great question. Thank you. So not everyone has to answer, but let me open it up to the brilliant panelists here. Who would like to take a shot at that?
I think I wouldn't call it desire. I would call it intuition. Because I think you hear, we all talk to ourselves, but daily basis, there's so much noise. It's hard to hear your intuition. But we all know your intuition is always right. I would just say I follow my intuition, and I train myself to hear more and more every day. And I feel like there is one thing amazing about becoming older. The more I get older, the just everything becomes more clear. And I wish I could go back myself when I was 20 years old and tell myself, learn to love your wounds, because those are what makes you who you become today, right? But I'm very happy what I went through in my life, no regrets. I think everything is there to teach us something about what's coming, making us ready for what's coming. And yes, there are some very sad stories, unjustified stories, and luckily my story is not one of those immigrant stories, but yes, there is a lot. And I don't know how to explain some of those. I don't have the tools to explain myself yet, because it's just really heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. But I think I would just say, just follow your intuition and teach yourself how to hear your intuition.
Thank you.
I think you got to trust your na'au. Yeah, as Hawaiians, it's your intuition, but it's our gut feeling that your na'au, and I think oftentimes our kupuna, our ancestors, speak to us when we don't really understand it. But you have to be open to hearing it, and trust yourself. You have to trust yourself, because sometimes and put away the fear. Be bold, be brave, and know that you have the ability and you can do whatever you choose to do. And just go for it.
I was just going to say, take risks. I think that's the other beautiful thing. As you get older, you just don't care as much anymore to fail, frankly. And there's a lot of failure. That's the only way we learn, right? And sometimes you can have spectacular public failures or private ones and personal and all the rest. It's just being willing to go for it, just like Auntie Vicky said.
Yeah, definitely. Taking an action, right? I think most of us have a vision, but executing the vision is very special. And it's very difficult part of the vision. Because you have the purpose, you have the vision, and you know how to execute it, but the fear comes in, and you start to doubt about yourself, your abilities, the people who are around you. And I think just if you can shut down that noise, I think we all are capable of doing whatever we love to do, what we want to do.
I think you also have to surround yourself with good people. Yes. Yeah. Don't. If people are talking negative, you need to push that away and find people that love you, that support you, and that will be able to, advice is always great. Like my students, my board, I'll say, I want to do this. And they're like, well, Kumu, maybe. And then I'll think about it. Yeah, okay, you're right. But listen and learn. But I think you have to also surround yourself with people that love you, with people that trust you, that people that you trust, and then build on that strength that those resources.
And this notion of risk-taking, and Melissa, you described it, sometimes it involves failure. But is it really failure? You know, it's because it's always information, I find. And it sort of contributes to, you know, these things that we're talking about, to resilience and rebirth even. So it's all part of a forward trajectory, typically, I think.
Yeah, well, it definitely is failure. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it.
Okay.
I mean, I'll laugh and say you have to paint like 100 bad paintings before you get to a good one. My mom would say that as an amazing published poet in her class. Or she wouldn't say that to her students, but she'd say it to me. Yeah, you got to write 100 bad ones before you get a good one. No, it's that perseverance, it's that intuition, it's the na'au, it's that belief that eventually you will find it and it will come, and you'll be with your community of people who will support you. And it's a really long road. Sometimes it can be a really long road, but eventually it does get easier. I promise you, it does. You don't have to you're not struggling forever and ever. It will, get easier as it's just consistency and persistence.
Thank you. Well, we have time for one more question, if there's another question from the audience. Please.
I'm not sure it's a question.
Okay.
It's just, I'm someone, as I get older, I really appreciate working intergenerationally. And I think sometimes when we use that language, people often think it's about what the elder is offering and giving. But I get so much myself from those exchanges, and this notion of curiosity, right? And the ways in which those relationships can lead towards forms of innovation and practice, and so I wonder if you could speak to the ways in which you might work intergenerationally in your practices.
So today I have my keiki class. They're the greatest because they don't have a filter. They're just like, they come in and they're running around, and it's like, and then I have parents with them, and we have older and younger kids, but as much as I give them, as I teach them, I'm learning from them as well. And then I think you need to surround yourself with young people, because I've learned so much technology from them. It's like, I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this. How do you do this? And so I found that having young people around to share with you technology, we have some, now I'm the kupuna now. It's like, wow, I'm a kupuna already. I'm an elder kind of thinking. It's like, how did I get there?
Where were you when that happened?
What happened? But they know so much, and they grow up with an iPad in their hand or in school. And how do you open that? How do you run this? So the kids are teaching me as much as I teach them about my culture and about hula. But in that process, that joy that we have to spend that time together with them, to me, is the part that I just love. I just love spending time with the younger people, time with my grandchildren, time with, my sons, and time with my students. So, and then time with my peers. So, now that we're like, both Robert Casimiro, myself, and I, and we hang out a lot, and we're realizing that our kumu is not around. That generation of elders that we looked up to when we were starting, they're not there. And we looked at each other the other day, and he says, "Don't tell me we're it." I was like, are we it? We can't be it. There's got to be somebody, and that's the scary thing about us, about that. It's like having we're those people now. So, but I think for me, it's having the next generation that's coming up, and being able to play and have fun with them and hang out. To me, that's the learning from us. Yeah. And knowing that we're not it.
Yeah, I would just say that I'm always I'm sort of I'm always in that process of interviewing people. I was interviewing you, Chef, earlier about your immigration story. I'm perpetually curious about people, and that's why I do the podcast and do the interviews, and I just don't think that ever goes away. You sort of, doing interviews with people, it's sort of addicting to be in a moderator role, because you just have the depth of conversation that you can have with people. There's just nothing like that level of conversation. And that can be with anyone younger. Some of the most interesting interviews have been with people in their 20s, just learned so much from that perspective. Incredible. So yeah, I'm always looking for people to talk to.
To me, I think my mom would answer this question much better than me. But just being around, I believe younger people energizes me. And they have a lot of dreams, so much dreams. And there's so much possibility for them. So I just go back and think about my life, like the way they think. Almost like I go back in my 20s again, and I start to see, yes, there is so much possibilities. I think as we age, we start losing vision about our future as our young selves. And I think that's what makes me very happy working with younger people is I realize there's just so much potential comes with the future. And there's so much dreams, there's so much ways I can become. I think it's just inspiring.
Thank you. So you've each touched on this closing segment in the remarks that you've made so far, but I'm going to see if we can tie it up in a bow as we wrap our discussion. It's a two-parter. What one thing would you compel the folks in this audience to do when we leave? What action would you like folks to take? It can be on the themes, rebirth, resilience, right? Resistance, or just in general. We've heard a bit about government and other things already this evening. And then the second part of it, if there's anything you haven't shared already that you think is important advice that you could extend as a gift to the folks assembled as they leave, what would that be?
I guess I'm going first. Okay. May I have the question again?
So, okay, part A, is there a specific action that you would ask folks to take as they leave?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I do really wish everyone to learn about our farmers and drive to the farmers and just buy everything you can, as much as you can from our farmers directly. I think that would lift our community, that will create a more sustainable Hawaii, and that will create more resources for the farmers to become farmers. If not, that would definitely create them more resources to continue to be a farmer. That is what I would love everyone to do from.
Yes, and I would say on that note, for all of us who live here, I would encourage you, if you don't know about where you live and your place, please find out more about it. There's so much. That's the history of your place, the history of the names of the streets, the history of the water that flows through your place. Everyone, whether you arrived here last week or you've been here for 10 generations, can always feel connected to this place. It's the one gift we can give this place, is to learn about it and to learn not just about the biology of a place, but the cultural, everything about it. It's something that, I still struggle with, and I'm born and raised here, but lived in many different places. So there's always so much learning that we can do. And with that learning, we then can become just, engaged in some of the things that Auntie Vicky was talking about, with our water, care for our land, care for the arts, the artisans, the farmers. But it all starts with curiosity about where you live and what happened here before and what the plans are for your place in the future.
So I'm hoping that everybody will go back and make something that they've never done before. So during COVID, I decided I was going to make pizza. I became a pizza maker. I did practice with the pizza. I was looking it all up, and so I made pizza. And for Christmas, I made pizza dough, pizza sauce, and pizza ingredients, and I gave that away for Christmas to friends because I became kind of like I was doing pizza. I haven't done it in a while, so now I'm going to go back and go make some pizza. But I want you to go. So do something that you don't do. Like I'm not a chef. I prefer to go to a restaurant, but I like to play with things. So go home and find something that you want to play with. Do something different out of the ordinary.
Love it. Thank you all so much for this inspired conversation, inspiring all of us who are assembled here this evening. We appreciate the work that you bring into the world every day. And it's a pleasure to know that you're fellow travelers with us and trying to contribute to a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. Thank you so much, Chef Anu, Melissa, Auntie Vicky. Thank you. Please join me in giving them a hand.